These are some Dinar Guru updates, starting off with Samson article, quote, industry announces the size of sulfur reserves in Iraq. The sulfur reserves of 320 million tons contains sulfur rocks. Walking stick via Frank 26, even though the new prime minister is pro-Iranian, he will push the monetary reform because Iran is dependent on the IQD. This prime minister, who is pro-Iranian, will benefit both sides. Militiaman article, quote, the first foreign flight departs from Kirkuk International Airport. Militiaman says, looking like they are gearing for international travel. Investors will be looking for a good, fast, safe, and reliable service from country to country. A good sign things are getting closer to internationalism, all pointing in the right direction. Mark Z via PDK, question, is Iraq seating the new government today? Mark Z says we are still waiting for news on that. My last update was they were hopeful to get it on Saturday. If not, then it would be Monday. Technically, they are still in the 2-week window that they stated they would have the government seated by. The window ends next Thursday, I believe. Pimpy says we're just waiting for the new government to be formed and we'll see what happens from there. And Caparoni is saying the Central Bank of Iraq stated in the news article they are beginning to have international cooperation with banks. International cooperation between the Central Bank of Iraq and other banking partners has nothing to do with the exchange rate. It has to do with compliance to international standards. Mark Z via PDK question, are you Redemption Center folks working this weekend? Mark Z says they are on call but not at work. Other than Redemption Centers on call, it's pretty quiet on the RV front. Samson article, quote, Baghdad is second in the Arab world, 52nd in the world as the most populous city. Quote, the capital of Iraq ranked 52nd in the world with the most densely populated city, as the population of Baghdad in 2022 amounted to 7,511,920 people, an increase of 2.58% from the year 2021. Mountain Goat, as I told you, we did have the window of opportunity coming up in January 23, but issuance of the new 20,000 dinar note, now this crooked Iranian-backed puppet government being installed, I am not entirely clear on what the CBI is going to do, if move even. And RV already says, I think their banks and citizens are ready to go. Every time I hear about someone in Iraq, they have been told to expect an RV soon. All right, Sampson article, quote, NATO, Iraq is an element of stability in the Middle East. Walking Stick via Frank 26 says the CBI satellite banks in U.S. opened. Walking Stick says the satellite banks that have opened up around the world are in position to collect 30 notes outside of Iraq's banks for their M figures. These 30 notes will be converted electronically into their Iraqi citizens outside of Iraq bank accounts. Citizens in Iraq can also trade in their 30 notes for electronic accounts or for the physical new small category notes in their hands as lower denoms, either through banks or through the ATM machines. Frank 26 says, as far as exchange rate floating, you have to be responsible. You have to know what to hold, when to hold them. You have to know when to fold them. In other words, give them up. You're going to have to determine that based on your needs. It may be that you want to exchange it 1-to-1, or you may want to wait a bit, let it float, see where it caps, but you've got to be aware of that. That is the math you are now responsible for. You are invested in this. The math is you have to understand exactly what the float is going to do, how they'll do it. You've got to be aware of when certain denominations will be canceled and the time limit. Remember the 50? They gave you 6 months to trade in. Be aware of the math at the bank with the spread, fees. Don't let them trick you. Be aware of the math you are now responsible for. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them because they will trick you. Pimpy says, understand that the central bank is its own entity. It's separate than Iraqi government, and they're the ones actually determining what the exchange rate is going to be. If for some strange reason the governor of the Iraqi central bank feels it's necessary for a higher exchange rate, then that's what they'll make the change. but they're going to have to justify it, and it might be against all normal reasons why an exchange rate changes. Caparoni says if and when the dinar ever goes up in value, it will be based on Iraq's economic growth. The issuance of a 20K note falls in line with that. It's the beginning of the reduction of the note sizes as the dinar begins to appreciate gradually. RV already says, I think the CBI, UN, and IMF have the finish line in sight. They are in a dead run to get the RV accomplished. I think the CBI is ready to release the RV once the cabinet is released. And lastly, Sampson article, quote, Parliamentary Finance talks about the fate of the dollar price of the new government. Changing the price of the dollar from time to time has significant repercussions on the local market and the economic situation in a way. That is why we do not believe there is any direction to return to the dollar exchange rate to its previous position, even by the new government during the next stage.